Yes, people, welcome to the first episode of Kish's Corner. Any technical difficulties that happen today, please bear with us because this is our first time doing this. I've got the chat up on my phone, so please do get any questions or any comments down below. But yeah, this is going to be a very fun weekly show. Um, where we're gonna have some of the best guests in the game. I genuinely don't think any other show is gonna have better guests than us. The people I've got lined up is gonna be sick. So yeah, please do share this video around so we can try and get as many people in here. I think the guests themselves will help us do that as well. But yeah, I just got back from Barcelona, so I had a nice holiday, my first holiday of the summer, which was needed. But obviously, the Premier League opened as well, so it was an interesting weekend. As most of you will know, I'm a Spurs fan, so we're not gonna touch on that too much today. But I thought Spurs, let's just get it out of the way. Massively undercooked that team. Um, we had a horrible preseason. There's jet lag involved. There's still injuries lagging from last season. I thought the back four that he chose was horrendous, really. Because in the Premier League, like the athletic and physical level of the Premier League right now has never been higher. And to pick a back four of Archie Gray, Van Hecker, Senesi, and Robertson in 2026, up against probably one of the most like physical and athletic front lines in the league in terms of Brentford, Ouattara, Igor Thiago, and Sharda. That was just a mismatch from the get go. And then the front line, I thought, I mean, that front line is never going to start many games for Spurs together. But the lack of ball retention meant that Brentford could just turn the ball back over and restart their attacks, their attacks, their attacks. So we really struggled. I'm not too worried about Spurs long term. I think the personnel improvements will be key. I think the other thing that Brentford did is they really narrowed Spurs's sorry, they really compressed Spurs' build up. So De Zerbi always wants to play through the center of the pitch, right? And they left the fullback spare and they left our front line 1v1 because they knew our front line wasn't a real threat. And they knew that Porro wasn't playing. I think if Porro plays that game, we can find him spare a lot more, and then we can create better opportunities. But yeah, that Spurs game, I'm not too concerned long term. We'll see how the Newcastle game goes. But the other game I did watch in Barcelona was the United game, and I watched it with my mate who's a United fan and my other mate who's a Chelsea fan. So I'll come on to Chelsea. Obviously, we've got TBL joining us in 15 or so minutes. So please do make sure you have questions ready for him as well. So we'll touch on Chelsea in a bit. But United, I thought they were just really poor. I mean, Hull understood the assignment, like blocking out the middle. United didn't have any focal point up front or any real box threat, so they had Cunha playing as the nine. So if you're really packing out that center of the pitch and leaving the flanks really open, you need some 1v1 threat, or you need someone who's going to really deliver quality into the box. Now, even that part, right? They didn't have a Sesko on the pitch to be able to deliver those quality crosses into the box anyway. But at least have players that are going to stretch teams out. And having Dorgu and Buemo as your wide threats is just not ever going to be able to break down that low block. And I thought they nullified um, Bruno. They were great from set pieces as well. Balumi, that is a player to watch. Balumi on that right hand side is something special for sure. Like he's the kind of guy that will be a maverick all season for Hull, I think. And those kind of lower teams need those personalities and those match winners. And I do think Balumi, he reminds me of like a Rayan Shirky type. Obviously, he's also Algerian, so that helps with the comparisons. But just the low center of gravity, the quality on the ball, I was really impressed with him. And then any other games that I caught, Liverpool, Newcastle, I saw bits of. Um, Newcastle were excellent. That front line, I mean, that front line is not going to work in every single game. It's just not. It's, like Osula, Elanga, Wissa is built to play against a Liverpool type team, right? Teams that expect to press you, expect to have more of the ball, expect to push up really high. Wissa, Elanga, and Osula is a nightmare for that kind of team. However, teams are going to come to Newcastle and sit a little bit deeper, and then those three lack the intricacy. So it's different horses for courses. Obviously, I thought the manager. I know he's been getting a lot of like doubters already. I heard good things about him before he went to Saudi. So I think he was at Salzburg, I believe. And people seem to write him off straight away. And I'm not really sure why. But yeah, he for me is from that first showing. I thought he chose that team really really well. Um, that front line. I mean, Osula is a scary scary sight, like a scary sight in transitions. Um, Let me go to the chat though if there's any questions. Um, United keep saying they need a left back when they have Dorgu right there, make him an overlapping fullback. Yeah, I mean, I've heard from United fans that he struggled at fullback. I didn't watch so much of United last year. Um, Hull just bought Ilias Ansar. What a signing! I haven't seen enough of him. I have seen that though. Balumi's dad is apparently, yeah. People say that Balumi's dad is North Africa's best ever player. Apparently, he's similar kind of technical footballer. Um, but yeah, Newcastle like in some ways, I'm like, what they're doing is a huge risk, right? They've sold their biggest players and they've replaced it with real young talent, which is something I thought they needed to do earlier. Like in the Eddie Howe tenure, I thought their signings would never move in the needle. They were constantly like raising the floor, but never the ceiling. And so the project just kind of stalled and went stale. Right now, they seem to be raising the ceiling, right? Lewis Miley, I think, is going to have an amazing season. We'll come on to him later in the show because I've got our guy Spencer who's going to come on and talk some data with us. But also, they bought Torre on the wing. They bought Sean Stir in midfield. They bought Bamba in midfield. These are really young talents that Newcastle didn't seem to be investing in too much previously. It was a lot about kind of skipping that step and trying to go for European places. And I think that kind of turned the project a little bit stale. But yeah, I think people were doubting them. Obviously, they've lost big players, but I always think that teams like people expect these teams when they lose big players to really really struggle, but sometimes selling big players at the right time is not a bad thing. Being able to reinvest, especially when a project's gone stale like I think it did at Newcastle. So yeah, I think that they're definitely a team to watch. Osula I think is going to have a big season. So yeah, any questions you guys have, get them in the chat. 21 of you guys in here, which is a great start. Thanks so much for joining. This is going to be every single Tuesday at 6 p.m. every single Tuesday. Any guests you really want on the show, make sure you hit us up because I've got a real good list, but I want to know who you guys want to see. Literally anyone you can think of, barring unrealistic ones, obviously. But anyone in the space, please do let me know. Chelsea just made 15 million profit on Delap. Now I think Delap, this is another like example of players are often overhyped or then over kind of criticized. So Delap, never for me a Chelsea profile player. He's someone who suits one of the lower teams. He can obviously fight in the box. He's a decent like transitional runner once he gets in his stride. We've obviously got TBL coming on very soon who can give some more insight on that. But I think he'll do well for your lower prem teams. I don't like him as a player, that's for sure. And I think he's definitely not of the quality of Chelsea, but I think he's a good Premier League striker for one of those teams. Um, if Delap went for 45 million, Jackson should be going for 80 million. You guys know I'm a huge fan of Nicholas Jackson. Contrary to many other people, I think he's going to be a top striker very soon. CFC Sam says he's going to be great with more space in front of him. Yeah, that's how I feel about Delap as well. I thought Delap had technical qualities at Ipswich. Do you remember the goal against Villa? Is that the one when he double step over it? Because that was a top goal as well. Yeah, I think like I said, I think he's been over criticized. I don't think he's of Chelsea's level quite yet, but I think he's a good Premier League striker. Right. I think we should get TBL in here to discuss the Chelsea game because obviously that's fresh in the memory. And I was very impressed. I want to get his thoughts on it for sure. So if we can get TBL in here, my producer will just add him in. In the meantime, Jackson defo going Villa. Yeah, I think Emery is going to do wonders with Jackson. Um, waiting for TBL to just give us a second, guys, and TBL is getting added in. Yes, Tom, can you hear me? We are live. We are live. This is new to me as well, so I'm not sure if you've done lives before. So. Tom, tell us first. Just reply to what we were talking about there with Jackson and Delap. What are your thoughts on those two before we get into last night's game? Yeah, give us a second, guys. Sorry, guys. Give us a second. Give us a second. As I said, there's going to always be technical difficulties in the first week. So please do. I'll actually just relay what Tom was saying because Tom said that Jackson didn't quite play much at Bayern because if he played a certain amount of minutes, then Bayern would have had to activate it permanently and they didn't want to do that. Um, but that Villa fits him like a glove because they play a very transitional style, not too dissimilar from what Watkins would offer. I would say to that and he also said Watkins is the better finisher, which I agree with. I'd also say that Jackson's the better link player than Watkins, and I think Emery will actually do wonders with him. Um, and we didn't get his views on Delap yet. Maybe for the better. I'm not sure if he's a Delap hater or a rater. Um, yeah. Any more questions while we're waiting for Tom to get back in? Please hit up the chat. Make sure you also, I think, like the stream. I think that's important. I'm learning all this stuff on the job. Um, yeah, there's obviously more games tonight as well. So if you have any questions about those, please let me know.
Hello. Hello, hello. Should we
Okay, I think we've sorted it, guys. We got 30 people in here now as well. Yeah, can you hear him now? Please let us know in the chat if you can hear him. Tom, please
Hello,
speak.
I'm here. How are we doing?
Let us know, people.
Hmm.
Yeah, okay, all good. We can hear. All right, Tom, carry
Nice.
on with where you were at.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a huge pickup for Aston Villa. I think he's. I mean, I don't need to convince you. I know you're very high on him. You would have liked if Spurs signed him, but I'll miss him for sure. I had quite a soft spot for him. I know a lot of Chelsea fans. He was quite a Marmite player because of his finishing. I think any striker with inconsistent finishing like that, they're always going to have mixed opinions of them. But I think for Villa, he's a really good pickup, and I hope he does well, but not against us. So yeah. As for Liam Delap, this stream was me. I found out that this is now happening.
I 45 million to
Someone
who? I haven't
you
seen this.
reread that. You reread that live chat saying Chelsea have made 15 million profit on Delap, and I went to Twitter,
I
and
only found
yeah,
out on the
it's
chat as well.
agreed.
So
It's agreed. He's
who
going to
who sorry, who's
Forest.
the getting Delap?
Forest.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. That's Marinakis for you. My question for Tom from George, I can't pronounce that surname. What do you think the plan will be for Esteval? A player of his talent being condemned to Parma backup seems insane and bound to push him out.
I think that's a bit extreme that it'll push him out. I think there's a lot of mystery around he had a hamstring injury at the end of last season, and that's the reason he didn't go to the World Cup. He would have for sure been in Ancelotti's squad. So I'm not sure what the severity of that injury was. There was reports at the time that it was like a grade 4 tear, which is quite serious, but he's back and he's ready. He came on as a sub last night. And there's always going to be that question mark, but the kid's still 19, 18. I think he's going to get a huge amount of cup minutes. I think even with Palmer maybe still nursing that injury that he had all of last season, I think there's definitely going to be minutes for him there. And I think people need to remember that no matter how good he is, you can't just throw in a guy that young. I think you see it, I think, with Rio at Liverpool, especially under Arne Slot. I think there's a lot of the boring stuff in football that these younger players need to learn: when to jump, especially wingers, when to jump, when to press, a lot of out possession stuff. Like, they look great on the ball, but Esteval needs to probably bulk up physically, grow a bit more, be a bit more sort of smart defensively. But I also think that he doesn't lack the effort, for sure. He's got a lot of effort defensively, but I think he isn't quite there in terms of his defensive work rate. And those things need to come, and you can't just throw him into that situation because he could become a weakness, especially when Chelsea don't have the ball. And sometimes you just need patience with these guys. I think maybe there's a lack of trust there because of the way Chelsea have handled other young players, but I'm not really worried about him going into this season. I just hope that he stays injury free because he struggled a little bit with injuries last season.
Yeah, and you spoke about how important out of possession is for Alonso. So let's talk about last night, because I think you spent a lot of time without the ball. Obviously, game state was a huge factor in that. You scored in the
Yeah.
first 20 seconds or whatever. Henry, I'm going to share my screen, so if you could sort that out, and we'll get the tactics board up, because I want to pick your brains a little bit on that. Tom, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So let's just start with your team first of all. I apologize, guys, if the tactics board's a little bit blurry. We have tested it before, and I'm not sure why, but you should be able to work out what we're talking about. Tom, you can see what I'm doing, right? So just talk us through. First of all, we'll start with the front three because that's what everyone's talking about, right? And obviously, the first goal, instantly, Palmer found it in a bit of space, literally flicked around the corner. João Pedro goes in, dinks the keeper. Just talk about that front three in general. Like, what were your thoughts on that front three?
I think there was a lot of questions when we signed Morgan Rogers around where does he fit, because I think there's an assumption there that he likes the ball to feet quite a lot. But I think you've seen in this game, and I think you saw a lot of Villa, and I think one of the reasons why to a lot of clubs he's a very valuable player, despite maybe the numbers not jumping out, is because he arrives in really good places in the area. He has a really good understanding of where the ball's going to end up. He'll make runs if he needs to. He'll play wide. He'll come in deep. He'll swap with these guys. And I think even though João Pedro and Palmer on their own is a force in itself, I think he takes this front three to another level because he does a lot of those boring but valuable things in football that you need. And I think you saw that in this game, the way he arrived for that Lacroix cut back. I think the way he would drift wide, he would press, he would go out there out of possession, he'd be wide. I think he's definitely unlocked that front three, and it was so dynamic. I think he's a really good decision maker in the final third. I think he knows when to release the ball. He doesn't hold on to it for too long. If he finds it in some space in behind, he won't always try and cut back and shoot. He'll sometimes play the first time pass. I think one of the things that stands out, I think, for a lot of people that look at his numbers is he loses the ball quite a lot. He's quite a turnover machine. But I think what you get in that is someone who's really decisive and someone who really tries to force and make things happen time and time again. And that can be a detriment. There were times last night, and a lot of Chelsea fans highlight it, where he lost the ball in those situations where, Chelsea could have maybe retained possession a bit better. And I think their inability to retain possession was one of the reasons why Fulham was still kind of in that game for a lot of it. But as for Pedro and Palmer, like, if Palmer's playing like that, there's not really much else you can say about it. Like, it's just, that was one of the best performances I've seen in a Chelsea shirt from him. And he's, especially in his first 18 months here, had a lot. And I think Chelsea fans are really happy to see that, because the last 18 months have not been as good as the first 18 months. And there's a lot of maybe mitigating, but also factors involved in his performance that have been the reason for that. But if he can play like that all season, then I think the sky's the limit, especially for this Chelsea attack. And João Pedro is another really interesting one because he came in last season, seemed like a bit more of a number 10, false nine kind of guy that didn't really want to get involved in scoring goals. But Rafinha came in, and Rafinha won't be remembered fondly by Chelsea fans, but he really took João Pedro up to another level as an actual striker. And I think, I mean, I don't even need to say it. If these three guys are playing like they played last night, then I think Chelsea can beat anyone with that attack for sure.
Yeah, and this is sort of like sometimes where me included, football fans can overcomplicate these things. Well, like my first thought about this front three was right, like, yeah, great three players in different ways, but who is doing like this? Who's running? Because these
Yeah.
guys are all to feet players primarily, right? But good players make it work. And when good players are on the same page, they understand what is required. When, let's say, João Pedro drops in, Palmer knows that that run has to be made, right? That's just football IQ of good players, right? In the same way that Rodgers can do that. Now, I'd say Rodgers and Pedro, like they've got the athleticism to test back lines in that way anyway. Palmer in a different way. Like Palmer, you want Palmer as many touches as possible. You want to give him the freedom. I thought he was a joke last night. Like he was just floating. Really, really great to see because I think when he's on it, there's not many more entertaining players in the league. And I think the thing with Palmer for me is how well he speeds up and then slows down and speeds
Yeah.
up. You can see in that little run he went on where he shot and it deflected for a corner. It's like he just slows, baits the defender in, and then a little shift of pace. And it's not like anything rapid, but it's just a change of pace. He understands so well how to change the tempo. I thought, yeah, the front three were excellent. I think Rodgers, you're right. I think also what really is quite nice here is that Palmer is going to attract loads of people over here, right? And what that's going to do is open up these spaces for Rodgers to eventually arrive. And that's the way around that I would always want it with those two. So if Palmer can kind of drag people over, and Palmer is a player that's always going to attract players because everyone knows his quality, then, let's say it might not be Gusto who starts it or whoever it is. Palmer's attracted all these players. Gusto puts a cross in, and suddenly Rodgers is at the back post. Maybe it gets cleared, but the spaces that can be created by Palmer just dragging players towards him is going to be so key. Okay, let's talk about then the rest of the team. Right, let's just get your thoughts on all the other guys. Really, well, I mean, we can talk about Sanchez, but like, it's just boring. Like. We know we know how good he is at collecting crosses. I thought we even saw that last night in certain moments. We know he's got a mistake in him. Just like, who cares? Like, if you sign a keeper, you've got Penders on the bench, so you can talk about him a little bit. But I more want to kind of focus on these guys. So what are your thoughts on some of these?
Yeah, it's crazy that we're at a point in football where Chelsea are starting a season with one of probably the highest rated young managers in the world, and they're going to Craven Cottage and they've got a flat back five. It was a lot of Chelsea fans weren't happy to see 6 defenders in the starting lineup when it came out. But it meant that we defended pretty well. I think, that Josh King goal, I think Rodgers lets him run off of him, but still Sanchez should be saving it. It's kind of a half chance. And then I think with the second goal, I think that was Sanchez. I think he did it the most he could about it, and then I think it's a really good striker instinct from Gonzalo Garcia. To be fair, I think that was actually a really good finish. And it's interesting because I think you saw like a really Alonso coded back line, even though it was a flat back five. I think it's interesting that the worst on the ball out of the back three is in the middle, which is something that you don't really see in possession in the Premier League. You haven't really seen since this sort of 3-2 build-up has become so popular. And Lacroix played that role at Palace, and that's probably why Chelsea signed him. He's good at circulating the ball. He understands his role. But having Colwill and Achimpong outside, especially Colwill, with how good he is on the ball, is really interesting. But I think sometimes it can be a bit of an eyesore. I think he struggles to defend spaces at times. He's not the best at it. He's not maybe as good as maybe Josh Achimpong is. And he seemed a little bit out of place. He seemed a little bit uncomfortable at times on the ball last night. And I think having him in the left back position like that, I don't know whether it's getting the best out of him, but is it the best thing for Chelsea? That I think is the main question mark moving forward. But that
Yeah,
was
just
interesting.
I'll quickly touch on that because this is something we've discussed on the channel before. So I expected, this is before the Enzo stuff all started, right? I thought that Reece James was actually going to play right centre back this season. This is probably even before preseason, and I know the Lacroix
Yeah,
stuff started heating up, and I was like, okay, if they sign Lacroix, then this is going to be their back three, and I understood it because I thought potentially you'll see something like this in possession, where the
yeah,
left back
yeah,
might be a bit more reserved, and then you kind of get this back four anyway. Um, but and then you get Colwell's more central progression as well, and less kind of
yeah.
isolated moments out there. Now, obviously, the personnel probably last night didn't help because of injuries and whatever.
Yeah,
But
I would say like I also expect I wouldn't say it's out of the question that James plays there, but in our last preseason friendly against Sociedad, Alonso played Neto right wing back, and I think and Palestra left wing back, and I think that was something that could tie into what you're talking about, where at times it can shift into a four, where James goes out to a flat back four, right back, and Aguirre and Cole are in centre, and then Palestra goes left back. So that's something that I've considered as well. So we're kind of on the same page there.
yeah,
I think
and
Reece
just
James, one
quickly
of his
on
better positions is right centre back for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think in this stage of his career, I think it
Yeah,
suits him
yeah,
well. We've got a message from CFC Sam who says, "I think Colwell at left centre back might just have to be a bit of an issue for a while, maybe even a weakness,
yeah,
but
yeah,
he will get used to it. People forget that he had to get used to defending the channels a year ago, so he's not alien to it. He just has to get used to it again."
yeah, for sure. I
Yeah, and
think,
and I think what this does for Lacroix is you're right. I think we're not used to seeing central centre backs be the weakest on the ball, especially
mm.
Chelsea who have played a back three before, and I think it was David Luiz at central centre back, who's obviously brilliant on the ball. We'll get
And
to that.
Maresca last season, he lived and died by it. He was adamant that the only guys that could play in the middle of that three in possession were Tosin and Colwell.
The guys who are good on the ball.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and
So
I don't quite understand that personally. I mean, like, because I guess when you have such good progressors outside of them, in even if it's at Chimpong, but James, for example, as well, like, and I think even more importantly, I think you probably need two good midfielders on the ball, right? Then suddenly you've got how many options on the ball, and it's not, if he can't break the line there, he can easily just play it to one of the outside centre backs who are also
mm,
incredible on the ball. I think it definitely gets unstuck if one of these four is not at least good on the ball, because then
yeah,
you can, let's say you have, I don't know, someone else here, like a weaker player on the ball here, then suddenly they can funnel the ball, the press can funnel the ball out here, and you've got,
yeah,
you struggle then to play out from this angle. But I think Chelsea have so many good ball players around him that it works, and I think the reason they want him in the center is probably actually partly as well because of Colwell's weakness as well, because I think Lacroix is
yeah.
going to be able to clear up, because he's quick and he's
And
defended like that in Europe.
he's also like an amazing box defender.
Yeah.
He's really good at clearing set pieces and corners, and I think being in the center sort of lends him to being in and around those areas to be able to go to that cross when it comes in, and be that aerially dominant. Yeah,
Yeah, and then I'll just stop sharing my screen now so that we can discuss, because I want to discuss the Enzo, the Caicedo, basically the midfield situation.
hmm
Guys, before we do that, please make sure to like the stream. Please like the stream or hype it. I don't know if you can hype a live stream, but whatever. Um, yeah, and then we're gonna switch to the other view so that we can discuss Enzo, because this has been a this has been a flipping. I mean, it's just been ongoing for ages, hasn't it? Really.
yeah,
Um, let just touch on Enzo, and then touch on the midfield in general, and what you think will happen if with Enzo and if they'll dip back into the transfer market.
Um, my inkling, and I've stood by this for a little while now, is that I think he will leave. It seems like he's going to. It seems like he wants to go to Man City. Chelsea don't seem interested enough to keep hold of him. I think they would have given him a new contract if they'd done that, because it seems like if they gave him a new contract, Enzo would sign it. And City seem like they're willing to do a deal for around the 120 million mark that Chelsea want for him. So I can see that happening. My frustrations come in the fact that it's taken this long and that it hasn't been resolved, because I think a lot of people will argue that Chelsea need a midfielder anyway. If he leaves, then you don't have anyone in the midfield that can retain the ball to a high level. And you saw that in the game yesterday. Like Chelsea were, I think that pivot of Lavia and James really struggled to retain the ball, retain possession, like control the game on the ball for a lot of it. And bringing Enzo in allowed Chelsea to just keep the ball away from Fulham, defend with it. And losing someone like that, I think, is going to be big. And I don't see how Chelsea can go and get Adam Morton out of Palace with a week left in the transfer window without spending more money than they're going to sell it to for.
I think
So,
he's off
like,
limits now. I
yeah,
think
yeah,
like
yeah.
because of
It's
how key he is to that team, they would have had to have sold him earlier if that was the case.
yeah, and I think the midfield situation becomes probably Chelsea's biggest problem all of a sudden. I mean, a lot of people would argue goalkeeper, but it becomes their biggest problem if he does go. And I think it's rumbled on for too long. My opinion on Enzo is that I think he's one of the best midfielders in the league. I think the price tag that he's got is completely justified. But his relationship with the Chelsea fans is very complex, especially at the moment after the World Cup. And there's a lot of things surrounding that, not just the fact that he scored that goal. We even saw, I think, I was in the pub, I didn't hear the commentary, but I saw some tweets about it, about how we were chanting his name and Fulham fans were not, and he's going to get everything from every away ground all season if he stays. And if he goes
I,
to Man City, it'll be the same thing.
I'm surprised that I'm just surprised it's happened now, because I guess it's because he scored. Is it because he scored against England and Argentina? Like, because all those, I mean, the songs he was singing, we won't get into that too much, but the
Yeah,
songs
yeah,
he
yeah.
was singing for the against France, before the France game, or after the France game, whatever it was.
Yeah.
I thought that might have created some boos, but it seems that like it's just because they beat England.
I think he gets
A bit.
he got some chance even before this, but I think it just brings him to the center of attention again, and all those things come back. Like, and a lot of people think it's just to do with a goal he scored against England, but I think if all of that stuff hadn't come before it, I think it wouldn't be as hostile towards him. And that's the issue, is that his relationship ever since that moment became very complex with a lot of Chelsea fans. There's a lot of Chelsea fans that are happy to be completely irrational about what he is as a player because they just don't like him.
Yeah.
And that's a really complex situation. And the one thing that frustrates me about it is that he's doing all of this. He wants to go to Man City. He wants to leave, and he's doing all that stuff, talking about Madrid in the media and in spring. And in that moment with the bus incident that you referred to, Chelsea protected him. Chelsea kept him as vice captain. They kept him out of media for a month or so, and they protected him. And they let it all happen behind closed doors. And people can think what they want to think about that, but he owes Chelsea something for that, I think. And that's the frustrating part.
Yeah.
I mean, I do, I think it's a really annoying distraction. There was a report that came out, I think, from Italy yesterday that Man City were going to approach again, and that's the day of our first game. It's just not.
Yeah.
It's not what Chelsea want
And
right now. And
and
I think,
in
but I think it's Enzo's fault, but it's also Chelsea's fault as a club. I think Chelsea should have really been more stubborn about this. If he was saying during the World Cup that he wanted to wait until after the World Cup, Chelsea should have said tough shit because we need to sort this out for us.
yeah.
You're saying you want to leave. So yeah, it's all a bit of a cesspit right now.
And if I know Alex Scott is one that's been massively talked about, is there any other names that come to mind if Enzo does leave in terms of who you'd want to bring in? I mean, do you see Barco as a viable option this season?
I think Barco is like a classic player trading move from Chelsea. They probably got him for like less than 20 million. So if they got him in like a year, it would have been below market value. And I think there's huge question marks about like his physicality. So I don't think there's this idea that I don't think Chelsea want to put the onus on him. I think there's an idea that they want someone who's proven in that role. That's why Scott and Wharton are coming up.
Yeah.
I think there's other names out there. I've seen Manu Kone and Camavinga. My thing is always like I'm kind of sick and tired of Chelsea leaving Caicedo to just fight on his own all of the time and having someone who can be a physical force next to Caicedo, maybe sit behind him, let Caicedo be on the ball more, because I think Caicedo is more of a all-action midfielder than he gets credit for. I think he's much more of that than he is like a sitting, like a
Oh, for
Makalele
sure.
type.
Yeah.
I think people want to profile him as that because of the heritage with defensive midfielders at Chelsea. But I think freeing him up is something that Chelsea could explore. But Chelsea need, and we saw this last night, they need someone who will get on the ball and retain possession of it. And Barco seems like he's really good on the ball, but does he have the physical and the physical acumen and the intelligence to compete in the Premier League and be able to do that? Because retaining the ball isn't just being good on it and being able to pass and being able to sort of slow the game down and change the tempo of the game yourself. It's also being able to physically compete because you've got to keep hold of the ball. So yeah, I think I'd be interested by anyone Chelsea bring in. I just hope Chelsea do spend relatively big on someone that is going to play a lot of minutes in that role.
So
And I don't really mind any of the options. I like the upside of Alex Scott's defensive work, the fact that he can do a lot of everything. I like the fact that Wharton can progress the ball well. I like Kone can be a bit more of a physical force. Um, and Camavinga the same thing. I don't.
so if I was going to put you on the spot and say you could get one of Adam Wharton, Alex Scott, Camavinga, Manu Kone, who would you choose?
If money's not an object, probably Wharton, but I
Yeah,
think he'd be the most expensive.
of course.
I think he'd be the most expensive. That's the problem, and I try not to rule out the money involved in this stuff
Yeah,
because
you can't.
it's a factor.
Oh god, that's been my pain of the window of people saying it's not your money. I know it's not my money. I literally know that. But the point
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is if Spurs go, this is a Spurs related thing now. If Spurs go and spend 100 million on this player, that is now going to affect how much we can spend on the next player. I don't get how people don't understand that concept. Like there isn't just this
Yeah.
unlimited pot of money, right? So no, it's not my money, but it will be my team's money. Like it does affect everywhere else, right? So
And it's part of the like we're here to talk about football, and it's a huge part of why these clubs do deals. Like if money was no object for Arsenal, Morgan Rogers would be there. He wouldn't
yeah,
be with us. Like
of course.
it's a huge factor. So you have to involve it in when you're giving opinions and you're talking about football like this. So yeah,
Of course. Well, Tom, thanks so much for being the first guest on Kish's Corner.
thank you.
We
Thanks for
are
having me
going
on.
to have going forward a game that all the guys are going to compete on, but we haven't organized that yet. So I'm going to have to get you on to make sure you can compete in that. Probably some sort of quiz of some sort,
Sounds
up
good.
against me probably. I'm my football not like my like general what's the word, like football facts is not that good. Like football knowledge of what's going on, I'd rate myself, but like just like in what year did this happen, I wouldn't back myself that much. So it's gonna have to be like suited to my stuff so we can compete with me. Anyway, thanks so much for coming on. I'll get you on for sure again soon. And yeah, guys, please say thank you to Tom, and I will see you soon, bro. Um, Guys, we are now going to get into the next section with the boy Spencer, who you guys, if you've been on watching the channel already, please do if you haven't. But Spencer's a very, very intelligent data guy. Our kind of combination is often he does the data, I do the more eye test stuff, and it makes for quite a nice balanced take on loads of players. So we're gonna actually look at our stocks for the season. So what we're gonna do in this section every week, we're gonna have this 10 players that I'm about to reveal to you right now. 10 players that we have carefully chosen out this season who we have our stocks in. Once that is out, we can't change them. In January, we're going to be able to swap 3 players out and put 3 players in. But basically, the idea is that we want these guys to grow in value or stature or influence. So it's not like looking for your, Lamine Yamal, or who's another good example, Max Dowman. These guys are already really known. We're kind of going for guys that are under the radar right now, but we think by the end of the season, there's going to be a lot of clubs chasing them or a lot of people talking about them. So we're going to reveal our 10, and then every week we're going to rank them in how well they're doing. So let's say one weekend, one of them scores a hat trick. He will then be at top of the rankings, right? And he remains at the top of the rankings for the next week unless somebody starts outperforming him. So if he has another good game, he will remain at the top spot. But every week we will switch around the rankings, right? So we're going to reveal those names pretty soon to you guys. And then we're also going to look at some data from this week's Premier League and look at some trends that we think are interesting. So Henry, is Spencer ready to come on? Oh, hold on, I can't hear you. 1 second. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, perfect. Yes, guys, any questions you have, please put them into the chat. Um, in the meantime, let's have a look at what is going on in the world of transfers. Yeah. So Savino obviously is one that got announced today. Uh, People who are following me on my Spurs channels will know my thoughts on Savino. I think there's a huge upside in Savino. I think his ability to play both flanks is huge, and also you actually get a quite different player on both flanks. I think on the left side you get a more direct 1v1 player. On the right flank, you get more of a creative combination type player, someone that can definitely drift in field and combine. I think he's got that real Brazilian feel for the ball. Um, One of the best 1v1 players out there, one of the wingers who really struggles with finishing. Now, I don't think his ball striking is actually bad. I think a lot of it, I think, has come now recently down to overthinking, but I also think he often makes his decision and his mind up a bit early. And so, like, he'll beat his man, and his first thought is already, let's say, cross it to the back post, but he hasn't like necessarily looked up and seen if back post is the best option, or he doesn't tend to react to what's happening in front of him, if that makes sense. Like, I think he needs to become more flexible and adaptable as a player in the key moments, if that makes sense. But I think he's young. There's so much upside there. There's so much quality to work with. People will talk about the goals and assists, but if you look at the context around that, I think that's silly. He barely played at Man City last season, and then his first season, I think his numbers were decent, and then obviously at Girona he had good numbers. Yeah, guys, let me know any questions you have. Um, I will answer anything as specific or broad as you want. We've got about 10 minutes until Spencer comes on. Um, but yeah, also there's games on tonight, aren't there? Let me have a look at the games. I know there's one decent one. I forgot who it is. I think it's Leeds against Forest, I want to say. Did I make that up? Might have made that up. Yeah, Leeds Forest. I mean, that's gonna be an interesting game for sure. I think I'd imagine they'll rotate a little bit. Who am I excited to watch from these guys? I mean, Leeds, Muharemovic, I think he's a perfect signing for Leeds. This is a player who is so kind of good at the aerial stuff, all the traditional defending stuff, but then also has the progressive passing as a left footer as well. Um, Having all of those together, and especially if Leeds are going to play a back three, I think that's huge. Um, who else? I think Jaya Cunha at Brazilian at Forest. I think he could have a good season. Struggles a bit athletically, but is a beast and 6'5", and I think could suit the center of a Glasner back three. They've also obviously also got Usman Diamande coming in as well, who's someone who's been talked about for ages. I think if Hudson Odoi can stay fit, I think there's a lot of quality there. Um, Leeds Forest is kind of my two teams that I think are going to overperform this season, which is weird because they both struggled last season. But I don't think they've done even any incredible business. I just have a feeling about them. I think Leeds have done good business in terms of Trafford, Harry Wilson, and Mihremovic. And Leeds just understand what they are. Like they're not trying to be something they're not. And I think the Premier League has almost lost a bit of that. Um, Previously, there was teams that had their own identity, and I think Leeds are building a really nice identity. Anton Stack is a perfect signing for that type of identity, and I think they're going to do really well. I really do. Um, let's see if we've got any questions. Yeah, guys, please do hit the like button. I don't know what that does, but I know it helps. So please do that. Um, do I think Luke Williams Barnett will be relied upon now that Madison is hurt? I doubt it, but that's just because I got trust issues with with academy integration at Spurs. I just don't trust any manager to give the youth a chance at Spurs. But hopefully, I think he's more than ready for first team football. I think he's physically ready. I think he handles the intensity well. I think he's got the confidence and the arrogance to do it as well. If you guys can hear a baby crying, that is my nephew, and I don't know, he's crying quite a lot today. So I apologize for that. My fave signing of the season so far in the Premier League. Who is my favorite signing? Let me have a think. I like. Who do I like? Let me have a look. Because this is a good question. I mean, I was so impressed by Enciso at Ipswich. I just love his like he's the kind of guy that is like a match winner for one of those lower teams, and I think those teams always need one to bail them out of trouble. I think Enciso with his ball striking ability, but also like the personality, he'll take the ball in difficult situations. He'll constantly try things. I think that's a key to staying up sometimes. I think you need match winners in games, especially when you're not getting much out of it. You need players who are going to bring something out of nowhere. I think Enciso is a great signing. Who else has had good signings? Crystal Palace. I feel I made one. I can't remember who it is. Is it Palace? No, it wasn't Palace. I mean, Sangare obviously is an obvious one from Brentford. I mean, he absolutely ran rings around Tottenham on the weekend. And if you follow this channel, like we've been talking about Sangare since last season. We thought he was ready made for the Premier League. I'm surprised no bigger club went for him, but Brentford obviously sold him a really good project. So that's just not a surprise to me, that one. Like anyone who saw him last season or even in AFCON, he's built for the Premier League. Like the intensity he plays at, the way he can cover ground, um, his dueling capability, but also like there's so much on the ball quality that people underestimate. I feel like before they saw him on the weekend, his left foot is beautiful. Like the way he shapes his passes, I think he's a no brainer one. Um, the other one I had in my head was I thought Gonzalo Garcia looked good last night. And that wasn't my favorite before the end of the season, but I think he's not a pretty watch. He's definitely not a pretty watch, but I think he's going to do well. I just think like he's got that hunger to score goals. And so much of like scoring goals in the Premier League is just making run after run after run. Obviously, being physically capable as well. And he's massively physically capable. He fights for everything. I thought he protected the ball well. Even like sometimes when guys like that aren't the the strongest, no, sorry, the most technical, but they just understand what's needed to protect the ball. And I thought Gonzalo Garcia was excellent, excellent last night. And in the air, we know he's capable. I think the reactions for that goal as well, like that's proper strikers instinct stuff. I think Gonzalo Garcia is going to be a very good signing. Probably an overpay, but then like Premier League clubs get bumped every window, so like that's just what it is. Um, Yes, sir. I'll just answer one more question, then I'll bring in Spencer. Um, who's a good shout that could improve Arsenal left wing after Martinelli leaves? Touchline winger, not Barcola. Well, actually, I think I should bring in Spencer for that question. Spencer, are you in with us?
You tell me. Am I in?
Henry, is he in? Okay, Spencer, welcome to the first episode of Kish's Corner. Obviously, you're going to be a mainstay here. So we need to get you to answer this first question, which is who is a good shout that could improve Arsenal at left wing after Martinelli leaves? Not Barcola. Obviously, Barcola is going to your club, most likely Liverpool. Who do you have any kind of suggestions for Arsenal in terms of a replacement for Martinelli? He's obviously someone who's played a lot as a touchline winger. Sometimes to his detriment, I feel like. But yeah, who would you suggest?
I don't know who really improves over what we saw from Solis on Friday. To be honest, I was kind of blown away. I know it was Coventry, but he was insanely productive in Belgium. Just like every underlying metric and everything was just like 99th percentile. He's also he's really quick. If you look at now, FootMob has like a bunch of stuff like with sprints and top speed and all that. Top physicals too. It's different than like Trossard, where people are like, oh, he's going to come in and replace Trossard, and he's got this output, and then there's not as much like P and P, but I think he does have that. He looked really quick and he had a lot of sprints. So I'm gonna be honest. Yeah, I mean, you kind of put me on the spot. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. Maybe I'd always say Yankuba Minte can play both wings. I like him better on the right, but he's really good off the left. I don't know if there's anybody that's like realistic. Obviously, like Jeremy Doku would improve them, or something like that. But I don't realistically see City selling him. So I don't know who really improves him.
No, I do think with Arsenal, like it's probably worth them holding off for now.
Yeah.
I think like the winger market might look completely different this time next summer. I was so impressed with Solis as well. Like he just looks like someone who gets his actions off like constantly, and having that on both sides as well, because Saka's so good at that as well. Like the efficiency of just having a final action, I think is key. Yeah, I was unfortunately impressed with him. Right, Spencer, we are going to get into our stocks for the season. This is a huge moment for us because these players, we cannot change our stocks once they're out there. These are players we're going to monitor all year. We're going to be able to change 3 in January, like a January transfer window. But these are 10 players we're going to monitor all season. Every week on this show, we're going to look at how they performed in the last week, what they're doing well, what they need to work on, potentially projecting their next move, all that kind of thing. And we've chosen 10 players who we think are going to massively grow this season. So it's not players that are already out there, really, really known. Like, obviously, you guys will probably know some of them, but they're players who we believe are going to have huge years and be hyped by this time next year. So Henry, if you can prepare that. Perfect. So the first one I've got is Tylel Tati of Nantes. Nantes, French team. Obviously, unfortunate name if you're English. But they're in Ligue 2 now. Tylel Tati is a left centre-back, someone with a beautiful left foot, like just so comfortable on the ball. Someone who constantly wants to step into midfield to help progress the ball, but also someone who looks like he could be comfortable playing in midfield, like he's that good on the ball. He's a risk taker for sure in possession, and sometimes I think he could be caught out for this, but like he's putting in feints constantly when he's on the ball, trying to play out from the back. But he combines that with a very, very large frame as well. So he's built for the modern game. I mean, France centre backs, you can trust them very, very strongly. We've got another French centre back on here we'll talk about in a minute. But Spencer, have you seen much of Tati at all?
Yeah, I've seen a couple games of his where like I actually went out of my way to watch him. I'm pretty impressed with him. He's not like, I don't know if maybe like he's 18 and he can build on this stuff, but right now it doesn't seem like he would be like a nailed on like Premier League center back. He's pretty weak in the air, I guess. But again, though, he's 18 years old. The 2 things that kind of stuck out when I watched him, he's, like you said, risk taker. He's really willing to dribble out. If you look at like the locations of where his dribble actions take place, like they're further up the pitch. Like most center backs, when they commit dribbles, it's like kind of more like out wide where they would have like had a recovery and then there's space and there's less risk to take a dribble. His are more like, this isn't like the perfect comp for him, like stylistically, but if you think about how Joel Matip used to dribble further up, He kind of does that sometimes. If you look at it just like where the dribbles take place, really good in duels. Yeah, I'm really impressed with him. The other big thing is just to have earned that many minutes at that age and still be productive is very, very short list of players that did that and then went on to be bad. So because most of the players that were as productive as him at that age with that many minutes went on to be good. So that's why he's on the list for us.
Right, so that is the first player locked into our 10 stocks this season, Tyler Tati. Make sure you guys check him out because we will be talking about him a lot this year. Obviously, we're going to touch on these guys constantly over this season. So the next one we have on our list is Crystal Palace's JD Canvo, who probably more known. Obviously, if you're in the Premier League, you're more known. But I think he's been absolutely incredible just since he joined Crystal Palace. Was obviously Mark Gehi's replacement in a way. This guy breaks lines for fun on the ball. I think his best attribute though is his channel defending. Like he's so agile, so strong. You just can't get around him. And this is so important for the modern game where centre backs are often pulled into these wide areas, defending big spaces. And Canvo is someone that is going to be impossible to get past. Genuinely, I think that's one of his standout things, and I think that's something that the big clubs will start to look at because we know that big clubs need defenders who can defend wide because they push on more players forward, of course. Can play either side as well. So comfortable on the ball. I think he struggles a little bit in the air, but there's so much to like there as well. Spencer, what are your thoughts on Canvo?
Yeah, I think the only real like downside to his game that I see is like turnovers, but that's because he takes a lot of risks. Like you said, he breaks lines for fun. Through Saturday, he had the most line breaking passes completed in the Premier League. I want to say the City center backs overtook him on Sunday. But yeah, that's to that level that he's third or fourth in the league so far in line breaking passes completed. He can play on both sides. He played on the left last year after Gahey left, and at least this year he started out on the right. I think he's probably better on the right because he is right-footed. But being able to play both is valuable. And I know like Palace, they played Gahey off the left for most of the time, anyways, and he was right-footed. So it's one of those things where being able to play on both sides is really valuable. The thing to me though, it's that you mentioned like his ability to defend in the channels. It's also recovery pace. I think he's going to be like the big six industries like leading candidate for the center back that all the teams want next year, or Bayern or PSG. They have some aging players too. Kim and Jay's aging, Jonathan Tah's aging, Marquinhos is aging. I think they kind of want out on Zabarnier. Like there's openings at like the top levels of Europe. They all play high lines, super possession heavy. Line breaking passes from center backs are valuable, but also the ability to play a high line because he's insanely rapid and he can cover ground so fast. I think he's the profile of center back that those top teams are going to want. I think he's like from a stocks perspective, is like you got to buy this now. He's going to be regarded so much higher by the end of the season, and all of the best teams are going to be trying to sign him. Whereas he's just kind of considered like a good prospect right now.
So it's August right now. We're saying that JD Cambo by summer is going to be on many big teams' lists. So if you guys want to circle back and remember we said this, then hopefully you'll believe in our knowledge a lot more. The next player, now I think this is my favorite player on the list, to be honest. I was very adamant with Spencer that we had to have this guy on our list. This hopefully is not just me being biased to the type of player I like, and I don't believe that. I think he's the best, probably the best Moroccan prospect around with Bouadi, and that is Abdallah Wazain of Ajax. This is a player I am just buzzing to break through. Like he's everything I like in a midfielder. He glides with the ball so beautifully. He's got a wildly creative right foot. He's someone that takes responsibility, wants to be the main man of a team. Like he's the type of player that for me, you build a team around. Obviously not quite yet. He's only 17. He's breaking into the Ajax team further forward. So he's played a lot on either flank, but he's so comfortable in all facets of play. I think long term you want him as a number 8 because I think you want him to run games. I just think in a way, he's kind of wasted in the number 8 because his ball striking is so good. He can score. He scored a screamer in Ajax's first league game of the season, I believe, against Heerenveen. Um, but then again, you want him deeper as well because you want him to be able to dictate everything. So he's kind of like one of those players that you want two of. Um, but I think for me, I probably want him deeper with the license to go and break into the final third. So think like your early Paul Pogba at Juventus, where he had that creative license. He could play deep. He could play in the final third. But this guy is really really special in my opinion. And Morocco obviously have a huge pool of talent right now, and we've got another Moroccan on the list coming later. Spencer, have you caught any of him so far this season?
No, I saw the screamer that you alluded to. He was playing. He was in the second division, right? He was with Ajax Young,
Yeah.
Young Ajax. Yeah. To be honest, have not caught too much of him. You insisted that he was on the list, and I'm like, yeah, I'm happy to go with it. You really can't go wrong with a Moroccan from Ajax. So this is all you.
Yeah, and it's the kind of player that like it's kind of boom or bust. I feel like with these like super technical talents. I think with the like physicality thing, he doesn't look like he can't handle it. Like he can glide with the ball. He seems very intelligent, and like I've watched a couple of his interviews as well. Seems very down to earth and mature for his age. I think his older brother is also at Ajax, or I might be wrong, but his older brother definitely is a player too. But this guy, like, if you haven't watched this kid, make sure you go and watch him. He is everything that I look for in a midfielder. Like, he's my perfect kind of midfielder, and I just hope that Ajax continue to give him minutes because he's got minutes early on and he's impressed a lot. Obviously, Mika Götze went to PSG, so there is that sort of left wing spot, which is a very different player from Götze, but they have been playing him in that role. So he's one that's on the list, our stocks list. The next one we have is the fourth one on the list. We've got 10, by the way, guys. And that is Kevin Danois of Auxerre. Now, this one's an interesting one because a lot of Premier League clubs seem to be showing interest late in the window. He's a midfielder, very creative number 8, like such a crisp passer of the ball. Like his passes zip round. I think he's got such good feel for the game. The type of 8 that like everything can go through him. He reminds me a little bit of Mateus Fernandez, and I know you said that, Spencer. And before I'd properly watched him, I saw that tweet from you, and then I completely understood what you meant. Very like kind of stocky build, a bit like Fernandez, but like very agile and very like twisty turny. Yeah, I really like him. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his. He's yeah, I called it arbitrage. Mateus Fernandez is the big money one, and he's proven it in the Premier League. But yeah, the thing that I like the most about him, well, there's several different things. One, he is like a number 8, but I think he can probably play as a 6. He could probably play as a number 10. So one of those, like we talk about generalist midfielders and how valuable those are in the Premier League. There's probably no reason. There's probably a reason why a lot of teams are going after him. So there's that. The other thing is his ability, at least his responsibility level on the ball for Angers. I definitely not how it's pronounced, but for a 21-year-old last year, ridiculously high. I want to say he was within the top 5 of U21 midfielders for like share of team progression. So to be able to manage that much responsibility on the ball at that age, and that's not even really like the best part of his game. It's some of the other stuff that he's really good at. My friend Pranyav, he had a really good app that was one of the ones that got shut down recently. But it had like where the defensive actions take place on the pitch, and it like centrally or in the channels or like in the half spaces and stuff. And he had one of the highest rates of like channel and half space actions and stuff. So ability to get like side to side, really high ground coverage midfielder. No, he's really good. I'm a big fan of his. I think he's whoever gets him in the Premier League, or if he stays, he's just going to be. He's one of those players that there's just like I don't say there's zero chance of a miss, but there's very little chance of a miss. Yeah, because it's just so steady, and he has so many different things that he's really solid at. And while there's no like, I wouldn't say there's any like world beating trait in his profile, he's just got so much to like and so much that suits the modern game. And Yeah, he's big fan of his.
For me, this is sort of how I felt with Sangare in terms of like it's just will work. I think Ligue 1 is obviously a great translation league to the Premier League. It's such a physical league as well. Not that they're like the same player, but I just think both of them were such obvious kind of hits in the Premier League. And then like who knows how far they'll go, but at least for me, both good Premier League players with a lot of upside. So yeah, Kevin Dunmore is a next one. We then have Ezekiel Banzuzi, who is a very fun player. He is like built a bit like someone like Pogba. I think obviously less like flary than Pogba, but someone who's comfortable in all phases. So if they exist anymore, he is a box to box midfielder. 6'3", but very good feel for the ball, like very comfortable, very technical. But I think where like he could be really effective is like a box crasher. He has a real good timing of run into the box, and obviously his height massively helps here. So like think about like a half space cross with a late run from him. He loves that like left half space channel. 6'3", obviously, and if he can kind of get on the end of those sorts of crosses, I think that's huge. But also little slide passes. He scored a goal in there opening game. It was against poor opposition where he sort of made a run down the left half space. Actually, I don't think that was his goal. That might have been an assist, but he loves that run, that sort of channel run from midfield. Just a physically, athletically, technical, very comfortable midfielder at Leipzig. We know that Leipzig rarely miss with their signings. So yeah, this is one that I definitely have faith in. Spencer, what's your thoughts on Banzuzi?
Yeah, he's probably he's like almost like a caricature of a box to box. Two of my favorite numbers about him. He had, looking at it right now, last year for midfielders, he was below the 900 minutes, so he doesn't usually show up on graphs. But for with the whatever 700 or 600 minutes that he played, he was in the 98th percentile for deep shots, so shots within the 20-meter radius of the center of the goal. So not just like longer shots that sometimes midfielders take, like deeper shots, ones closer and into the box. And then he was in the 99th percentile for box clearances. So impacting both boxes, not just like highly, like to a ridiculous degree, 98th and 99th percentile. Yeah, he's big, he's physical, he wins a ton of duels, he wins in the air. You said he's technical, not the most accurate passer, at least by the numbers. Perhaps that's an indication that could improve with more seasoning and more time if he has the technique there, but maybe the execution hasn't fully come off. I mean, if that's the case, if he does add that to his bag to where he's at least median level as a passer, like not a liability in terms of turnovers and stuff, and he has the impact in both boxes that he continues to like that he has now, ridiculous. Yeah, Pogba is like the 99th percentile outcome for this sort of an archetype. I don't think he's that. I don't think most players reach the 99th, but that's like a good picture to describe of like this is he just impacts in the high impact areas. He just delivers so much value.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I think like
he's fun.
we won't see I just don't expect us to see a talent like Pogba again in terms of that full package. Like you just can't. And whatever your thoughts are on Pogba, the actual prototype of him, like that being that technical, being that good of a passer, being that good of a dribbler, and being that big and strong and tall and quick, like you just can't. You won't be able to replicate that. But again, even if it didn't quite work out the way we all wanted it to. The next player is Oscar Pitusewski. I've learned how to pronounce that. That's a very difficult name to pronounce. He is a Polish winger who joined Porto in January and sort of found his way straight into the starting 11. He's currently injured, but it's not a serious injury. Incredible 1v1 player, like burst of acceleration, the kind of winger who will go again and again and again at his fullback, which is huge in the modern game, especially for possession-based teams that constantly create these isolations for their wingers, and fullbacks are better than they've ever been, right? Defensively, physically, athletically. And so you're not going to win every 1v1, even if you're the best winger in the world. But having that like relentlessness to wear your fullback down is going to pay off in the end, or makes it more likely for it to pay off in the end, right? He's someone who's a little bit too direct and vertical sometimes. He's a young winger, he's like eager to constantly impress. But one kind of fun trait he has as well is he's a left winger who left winger who's right-footed. So loves to use like a Trivela cross with the outside of his right boot. I think that's something that we all love to see. Have you seen much of Petrusevsky, Spencer?
I have, yeah. He was one, just to peek behind the curtain. So everybody, he was one. Kish built his list. I built my list, and then we merged them together. He was one that was on both of our lists initially without seeing each other's. So yeah, definitely a player that we're both really excited about. So for me, it's a lot of like the way that I like build lists, just like for people to watch and stuff that I want to keep track on, not necessarily develop opinions, but just like flag who I might be interested in. Is just looking at I have like a number of different like plot charts of like these are generally the most important metrics that predict future success based on the position. And so for wingers, it's like on the one axis, it's like shots and chances created or non-penalty XG and expected assists, something like that. And on the other axis, it's like direct running action, so dribbles, progressive carries, long passes received, stuff like that. You plot those out in whatever fashion that you want. And you get like for U21, U23 wingers right now is Lamine Yamal way up in the corner, and then Yan Diomande and like the next set there, and then it just it cascades down into tiers the way that you would think that they would be. Petrusevsky, he's like in like the tier 2. He's like he's like closer to like the Yan Diomande, like next up, not like the Lamine Yamal, but closer to like the tier 2 than he is tier 3 of like I don't know, like William Gomez is another one, teammate of his. That's a pretty exciting player, but just doesn't have like the same general output level that Petrusevsky has right now. The thing that in like with every winger, the issue with him is that he's in the 98th percentile for rate of dribbles, so how often he dribbles per pass received, but he's only in the 32nd percentile for success rate. So like you mentioned, probably needs to peel that back a bit, but at this point in his career at 18 years old, you'd way rather see them be really aggressive and trying to make things happen rather than be tentative. So yeah, I'm really excited for him. I think maybe Gomez gets more hype, more love, at least at first. And from what I see on Twitter, that's the case. I think Petrusevsky overtakes him pretty quickly this year.
Yeah, and that's a great like shout for this season because obviously there's competition at Porto for wide players. So these are not like little stocks we're trying to go for. We're taking some risks here with these guys. Hopefully they all end up getting the minutes we want. We then have our second Moroccan of the list, and that is Othman Marmar of Watford. That might be the wrong way to pronounce it. Any Moroccans in the chat, please make sure that you help me pronounce that one because we're gonna have to say it a lot this season. But yeah, he's a player who can play on both sides. He actually won the best player at the Under-20 World Cup when Morocco won it. Don't know what that was, a year and a half ago, maybe. He's great. He's like more of a creative threat for me. Like his final third actions are really decisive. He makes good decisions. He's great at receiving from deep. Like he protects the ball so well. So like you can imagine him receiving from his fullback that straight pass. You can really trust him on the ball to have a man behind him and still turn out that really smoothly. Lots of body feints, good acceleration. I think the thing that impressed me most about Marmo was his creativity in the final third and his final action in terms of the cross or the little through ball. I think there's a lot to like there. So much kind of I think refinement for a player of his age in the final third.
Yeah, a huge fan of his. He's another one of just like that. What I described with Petrusevsky, you plot like the simple things, and you go back and you look at history, and it's like, oh yeah, Michael Elise looked ridiculous in these, and Bukayo Saka looked really like all of the best wingers just did like a high volume of actions in those two regards. He's another one that looks really good. He's one for me. I'm the two things kind of that stand out, and I wonder if this can sort of develop in his game because it's not really there right now. He's 6 foot, he bigger for a winger, but he's still like masterful dribbler. So it's not like one of those situations like, oh, bigger winger but really can't dribble. It's kind of the opposite. He's really excellent, really technical, but he's not super physical. At least like in the air and like in duels and stuff, he doesn't seem super physical. If he could develop that, he'd be ridiculous. If he adds that element to his game. But then the other thing with that is with his size, I would say it's more common. Like the not being able to, the being weaker in duels with his size is uncommon, but it's more common for like wingers. You think about wingers, smaller wingers tend to create more, and larger wingers tend to shoot more. And he's definitely he does have like a pretty good creative bag, but in terms of like how his actions break down, he shoots a lot more than he creates right now. So he's one of those where I think if he, I don't want to say like put on muscle, but like if he hits the gym like a little bit and he adds just like a little bit of tenacity or a little bit of like strength to his game, it'd be ridiculous. I think he's probably next year, and like in terms of like the stocks theme, I think he's probably going to be going up to the Premier League next summer. I think he's probably going to go mid-tier team like I wouldn't be surprised if like a Brentford, they just don't miss on wingers, like a Brentford or Brighton or even like a Fulham or somebody, just like one of the consistently like 8 to 12 in the league teams went after him. I'm really excited about him.
Yeah, and what Spencer was alluding to in when he was just speaking is that he obviously has plotted these guys for a long time, right? So he has the historical data around the likes of Elise when he was 19 or 20. So it's really interesting to be able to see their path and what they were kind of what kind of numbers they were putting down in different areas at that age, and being able to see, okay, this guy's also 20. What was Elise doing at 20? Or what was this player doing at 20? And then being able to see the progression. I think that's a really nice way to kind of help us predict the future of these players, because that's what this kind of section is all about, right? It's the stocks that we're buying. Got three more for you guys. So the first one is Christian Kofane. This is a striker for Bayer Leverkusen. If you remember when they played against Arsenal last season, I thought he was incredible. I thought he bullied. I don't know if it was both Gabriel and Saliba. I can't remember who was playing, but I thought he was excellent in both legs. Um, Brilliant at generating chances, very physical, quick, great intensity, runs the channel as well for me, and can hold his own physically. Quite simple in terms of link play. Like, he's more about someone who wants to get goals. So he's not going to be someone who drops deep and creates chances for others. It's more about him linking play and then getting into the box. But I think he's got all the physical and kind of mental tools to be a really, really top striker. Spencer, what are your thoughts on him?
Stuff really physical, wins in the air, especially for his age. That's something that as players get older, that they generally win more, but he's already at a good spot for his age. And that's all like well and good, but he generates chances with his movement. He generates chances on the ball, like with himself. He gets into good scoring positions. Honestly, he's pretty complete of a striker for 19 years old. There's not like a ton I don't think that he needs to add to his game. It's more so that he just needs to raise the level and raise the consistency of his game. But he's one of those where he just like he has all of the tools. There's like never any question about the tools. And at least from early days, he like the number one thing that you look at to predict if the striker is going to be good is if they find good shots and if they have like a high number of XG. Like it's just simply the most predictive thing. And he's excellent at that for a 19-year-old.
Yeah, and Atletico Madrid have shown some big interest in him recently. We know that Alvarez is potentially on his way out. I would like him to stay one more season at Leverkusen. I think I just want guaranteed minutes, partly for this series, but also just for his own development. So yeah, another good one there. We've got two more Premier League ones now. The next one is Lewis Miley. Now, he's going to be a starter for Newcastle this season. I believe that. We obviously saw him partner with 18-year-old Sean Sturr as well, which is a very young midfield who held their own massively in that Liverpool game. Miley is someone who's way ahead of his years in terms of his IQ for the game. I feel he reads the game brilliantly. He's super adaptable and versatile. I think he can play in different areas of the pitch. Very secure on the ball, but still is progressive. Wins in the air a lot. He's a very smart decision maker. I just think he's got that IQ and that mentality to really go far. I think the only real issue I have with him is he's a little bit immobile sometimes. I think if you leave him in big spaces, sometimes he can look a little bit slow. But I think there's so much like that, and a lot of the time with those kind of midfielders who might have mobility issues, their IQ can carry them, especially as they get more experienced. And I think Miley is a great example of that. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, you nailed it there with the last bit. The one downside would be I'm not sure he's the most mobile midfielder, but Sean Sturr's one. I wasn't super familiar with him until Newcastle signed him, and then I didn't look into him that much. And then I did once I saw that he was going to be starting against Liverpool. And he's like a lot of the stuff he does is he makes a lot of runs like up and down the pitch, in and out of possession. So he's a big kind of ground coverage guy. And then Alidej Bamba he's really physical, really sharp in a duel, a really big engine. So the two main midfielders, while young, the ones that they brought in to pair with Miley, do kind of negate that mobility issue. The reason, at least he's on the list for me, if you filter down, and this is thanks for pointing it out earlier. I guess I forget that where not everybody has is in the weeds like I am with the data. When I reference like a lot of stuff, it's versus like historical versions of players. So like with Mike, when I mentioned Michael Elise, I don't mean the 24-year-old on Bayern. I mean the 20-year-old on Crystal Palace, like how he looked in that sense. So applying that to Miley, what he looks like now as a whatever he was 19 or 20 last year.
19, I think.
Yeah, 19. So yeah, so it would have been teenagers. It's he has no comparisons in terms of his numbers between dual success rate and like what I would call a high degree of difficulty passes, like long passes, progressive passes, line breaking, final third entry, stuff like that. Like his combination of success rates, both like in duels and then the passing, it unmatched for teenagers really. In the Premier League, really the closest comparisons, you have to for the Premier League, you have to expand the age filter to everybody, and it's just like him and a couple Declan Rice seasons and like all of the Rodri seasons. Like he looks like that level. Not saying he's that level now, but he looks like he could get to that level with like a lot of minutes and pretty soon into his career. I'm not saying he's going to be Rodri, but that archetype of a player where he's not the most mobile, but he's physical in the sense that he's pretty strong. He's composed on the ball, and he's just always making the right decisions both in and out of possession. I think that's where we're at with him. I'm hugely impressed with him so far.
And obviously there's a like compared to some of these players, there's already a base decent value for someone who's played Premier League at that young age, is English, plays for Newcastle, one of the sort of more bigger clubs in the league. There is going to be big value there, but we expect that value to go up even more and by a lot. And I think if we're gonna talk about, sorry, there's an alarm going off in my house for some reason. If we're gonna talk about like which player is going to have the most value in this list in terms of just pure number, for me it's going to be him. Like I think if we were going to predict like who goes for maybe the biggest fee next summer or the summer after, I think Lewis Miley is the one with that English Premier League ready, all those kind of things. The last one we're going to speak about, the last player on the stocks list, is Kevin, who obviously came on last night against Chelsea. I think had a couple moments. Like I thought he showed a little, like a couple little, kind of little scooped outside the foot passes into, I think it was Josh King that he like combined well with, but was also up against, for me, one of the best channel defenders in the league in terms of Josh Achimpong. I think he's going to have a lot easier days, and also obviously against a top team. So I don't think that the kind of opportunities that I'm looking at him for the season were there really for him, but he did lose a couple of 1v1s. But I think his 1v1 game is incredible. I think he can be very creative. I think he's quite unorthodox in terms he has that Brazilian kind of flair to use different parts of the foot, kind of cross it when you're not expecting it. Lots of tricks. He enters his 1v1 duels at the perfect angle. He can go both ways. I just think there's such a good kind of skeleton of a top winger there. Now, obviously, he needs to put it together this season. I thought that guy who started, his name is Palacios, I think. I thought he struggled with the intensity. He doesn't look like a Premier League winger to me. I think he might also play centrally. And obviously, Arbeloa has come with his guys. But for me, I hope and think that Kevin will displace him and be a huge, huge player for Fulham and the Premier League this season.
Yeah, so I mean, we could have put Achimpong on. I saw somebody commented that he got pocketed by Achimpong. Yeah, many such cases. Like he's not going to be the only one to do that. He very well could have been on our list of stocks, but I mean, he's already pretty well known. It wouldn't have been worth putting him, but yeah, a lot of respect for Achimpong, and I don't know why Chelsea's waited so long to break him out. But with Kevin, he's like a very like wide bands, like wide outcomes sort of a player. We could look very stupid or very smart at the end of the season, and like I accept that that's a risk. Where like some of these players, like Kevin Danois, like much smaller band, like we're never going to look like geniuses. I don't think he's ever going to like break through and look like $100 million midfielder, but he's not going to look bad. He's just not going to embarrass at any point. Kevin's the opposite. We could look like wow, this kid looks like Jeremy Doku, or like wow, this kid looks like he belongs in the Brazilian second division, right? Like very wide ranges. The thing that why I think it's more likely that we're tilted to the positive rather than the negative is if you look at just, I mean, I referred to it earlier with the other wingers, but like the volume of actions and how much how much danger they're able to generate with the number of touches that they have. He's up there with, it was a lot of as a sub, but he's up there with some of the best, young wingers in the world. One of my favorite graphs, which I would use to for propaganda for Yande Monde, was the productive dribbles. So dribbles that not just any dribble, but a dribble one that led to a shot, a chance created, progressive carry, or a progressive pass. So dribble that did something versus dribble success rate relative to expected. So like over or under what you would expect based on where it took place on the pitch and where the position of the defenders and stuff like that. And it's like in the top right, it's like Lamine Yamal, Jeremy Doku, Yande Monde, and then just down below that was Kevin. And it like to be in that sort of a range for danger that he's able to create with the ball at his feet. I know he didn't put it all together, and like that's part of the whole thing is will he? But the signs are there that if he does put it together, like it's kind of like a 50-50, but if it leans the direction where like he does put it together, putting it together looks like one of the best wingers in the world.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. I've compared him to Vinny Jr. In terms of style. I think like the kind of unorthodox ball striking, the relentless 1v1 game, the swagger. Like I think that could he almost reminds me of Vinny Jr. before he exploded at Real Madrid, right? So much kind of flair, athleticism, but also a long way to go. And I think that's Vinny Jr. A lot of people writ him off at a young age and thought that he was a flop, and then he became one of the best wingers in the world, probably Real Madrid's best attacker for the last, five or so years. Obviously Mbappe's there now. But yeah, those are our 10 players. So they are the 10 that we are going to talk about throughout this season, monitor, um, rank each week of who we think's doing the best, who we think's not doing quite what we want. And so, yeah, make sure you guys check out those 10 players. Before we finish, we've just got a couple data trends we thought we'd discuss quickly from the weekend. Spence, I reckon we've got time for one or two. So what did you notice this weekend, and what do you want to bring to the table?
Yeah, the first one, and this is selfish because Liverpool based, but the two players that led the league in sprints this season so far through the first week were Jeremy Frimpong and Milos Kerkez. Interesting, both Liverpool players, both wingers, also not wingers, fullbacks. Also, funny enough, Anthony Lango was third. So a lot of it was a racetrack out on the sides for those two. The thing that I want to point out with why that is, it's actually not a positive for Liverpool. I would say that that's a negative. That's not something that I'm like particularly enthused about. Is because we don't have a midfield three, and the midfield two that we have, there's no screener, there's no like defensive solidity within the pivot. And if they're going to be running up and down the pitch, that's going to leave us very, very, very exposed. That was the case last year. I think Virgil van Dijk had the most clearances in the Premier League in like the past 7 or 8 seasons or something like that, which again, for a defender, like, oh, like lots of clearances is good. No, that means that he has to clean up a lot and that there's a lot wrong ahead of him. I mean, I think he had like 9 or 10 clearances, whatever it was, he's pacing to exceed 300 this season if he keeps that up. I think it does not work with having both fullbacks get up and down to that degree just with the midfield that we have now, with the midfield three being Verts, Gravenberch, and Soboslai.
To me, it's just asking so many questions of the centre backs constantly because there's only really two natural defenders on the pitch who are interested in defending, really. And it's not that you need like out and out defensive midfielders, but you need players who are capable of screening and protecting. And not everyone can be, I mean, it's quite basic stuff, but not everyone can go and join the attack, right? Like you need, especially in those wide areas. And I thought Newcastle set up perfectly against what they saw as an opportunity in terms of Liverpool, those wide areas and just Liverpool on the counter attack. There's no real structure there. And yeah, Iraola's new, and I think a lot of it is also a player issue. But I thought Newcastle were really impressive in terms of how because those three are not going to work against every team, right? But Wissa, Osula, and Elanga, that's a scary front three if you leave space in behind. They have their faults, all three of them. Osula, I'm quite high on, but the other two definitely have faults. But in terms of that game specifically, perfect. Like, I thought Wissa kind of in the 10, picking up any loose balls and then just carrying it 30 yards, and then having the other two go like that. That's just, those two are a scary sight. Like their athleticism is nuts. So I thought Newcastle set up well, but also obviously Liverpool struggled. Have you got any other data trends from the weekend for us?
Yeah, but real quick, I want to go back to a point within that.
Yeah.
Somebody in the chat said like Adrian Trufair was doing that last year too. Yes, that's the point. And Kirkes was doing that before him. That is a hallmark of Iraola. The difference is though that he had for most of the season, he had Tyler Adams screening the back line. Tyler Adams didn't receive a single through ball last year. His like value of the expected threat of his passes received. So like the value of how high up the pitch or how dangerous the received passes he received were is like the second percentile, like the bottom of midfielders. He was
So
not
he was
forward.
just moving laterally then.
Yeah, he never received the ball forward. He never made runs forward, never received the ball forward. He always stayed back and he stayed disciplined and he was always screening the back line. And that's like, you can have that with the fullbacks if you have a midfielder that's doing that. And if you look at like where his defensive actions took place, they were never in the attacking third. They were always in the midfield and defensive third. Like the dead on definition of a screener.
And who in the Liverpool squad do you see as someone that can do that?
There's nobody.
No one.
And that's why it's the issue.
Yeah.
Gravenberch doesn't have the positional like sense to do that. Soboslai kind of runs like he's high intensity and he has a lot of stuff that he is good with him, but he kind of runs around like a chicken with his head cut off.
And also, you're not going to use either of those two like that, because I think Gravenberch is quite like I love Gravenberch as a player, but quite like a casual, nonchalant player, right? Very good on the ball, but not like super defensively aware. Szoboszlai is someone you want further forward if you're gonna use him.
Yeah.
And then Wirtz is obviously the 10. So it's going to be an issue.
It's good players, but they don't fit. I think a fix is, it means Jeremy Frimpong's got to go. Bring in a screener, like Kema Andres would be like very perfect. But even like if not him, somebody more experienced like Nicholas Seiwald of RB Leipzig fits that role perfectly, and he's really good. Nobody talks about him because.
And who would you then, if you were going to get rid of Frimpong, who would you have at right back?
So Soboslai move into right back. He's still athletic enough to get up and down, but it's less of like a bombing up and down. It's more controlled. He can get forward. He can, like how Trent impacted the game from right back. He can still get forward and do that. We have the screener. It frees up Gravenberch a bit. It fixes. I think it fixes everything.
Your other trend from the weekend? One more probably.
Yeah, we'll do the the pace of play one. It's also semi Liverpool related, but if you look at like the direct speed, so how quickly, I guess it's kind of like yards per second or like meters per second gained within possession. If you look at the top two teams, they were Everton and Liverpool. Funny enough, that they're both the Liverpool teams there. But if you look at the bottom, before Fulham played, the bottom two were Bournemouth and Man City. The emphasis that I want to put on here with this is the City and Bournemouth. The City playing the exact same way that they did under Pep. They were always bottom 2 or 3 in terms of direct speed. They just play slow. They build up. And it's not so much that they play slowly to get to like an advanced position. It's just they hold the ball for so long that the aggregate of their speed is slow. But Bournemouth was amongst the tops. They were very, very fast last year under Iraola. He brought that identity to Liverpool. They played very quickly. But under Marco Rose, they were the slowest team in possession. I think that's just a really interesting juxtaposition of they went from like all gas, no brakes to like a granny driving 10 miles an hour under the speed limit.
I think that's really interesting because I think Maresca was always the next one from Pep, right? They had that lined up, and that, as much as I think there's issues with Maresca, and I don't know how it's going to go, I think at least you can see a succession in terms of at least definitely old Pep style, right? Is it makes sense with Maresca being the successor, whereas I think sometimes clubs don't. And Bournemouth are a very smart club, right? But sometimes clubs swing from one extreme to the other and don't expect and don't kind of preempt the impact of that. And if that is the case, Bournemouth's squad has been heavily built, I think, in a way that Iraola works. That heavily built in a way that works for Iraola. Now, Bournemouth have always recruited, I feel like, separate from the manager. So there are players and profiles in that squad, and they do have a deeper squad than people think, that could be used in that way, right? So I wouldn't be surprised to see some of the fan favorites under Iraola being phased out, who aren't quite up to the system. I don't know who. I mean, like, my head goes to someone like Tavernier or Tyler Adams is another good example. And maybe you bring in more comfortable ball player midfielder, or you get a more touchliney winger than Tavernier, or whatever it is. It will be interesting to see which players emerge at Bournemouth if they're still successful this season, and which players kind of drop down a bit.
Yeah, and I wouldn't approach it so much like with concern for them because they looked pretty good still against City, and I mean they're in Europe, they recruit really well. It's just really, and also like it's just one game. They could very well move to the middle of the pack, and it could have just been a product of like City trying to play through City, and just it is a one game sample, but a really interesting juxtaposition to me that they went from like I think they were either first or second last year to dead last in terms of the first week, how quickly they played. I think that kind of suits our boy Alvaro Rodriguez in the way that he's able to drop in. It'll be interesting once he gets kind of settled into the team. Is he going to be able to overtake Evan Nilsson? I think probably not. But is he going to get minutes while Krupi Jr. is out?
Yeah.
Maybe. But I think that playing maybe a bit slower and a bit more where you're not looking to just break immediately and everybody's looking to run in behind, but the attackers can like drop in and receive and connect with play earlier. I think that actually suits Alvaro Rodriguez. That's now reminding me. The last thing I wanted on this, Benjamin Sesko, when he was at RB Leipzig, he had one season where he had 2 seasons there. He did the exact opposite thing in both seasons. First season, he just committed just an insane number of runs in behind. He was basically used like on the last line, just like sit on the back line and make runs in.
And that's when everyone kind of thought baby Haaland at that point, right?
Yes, exactly. And then when Marco Rose in the second season, he did the opposite. In fact, like back when FBRF still was like a thing, and maybe they still have it listed, but like if you look at his position, he's like listed as a midfielder, as an attacking midfielder, like the MF, FW, like midfielder first, forward second. That's how much he was dropping in to receive under Marco Rose. That sort of a role really, really suits Alvaro Rodriguez, if that's the case, and if that's how they're going to play. I didn't see if that's how Nilsson was playing. I didn't really pay attention to that aspect of it, but them playing slow lines up to what Marco Rose was doing. That sort of a role that he had Sesko doing did not suit Sesko, does suit Alvaro Rodriguez. I'm pretty excited for him.
Yeah, and the last point I want to make on that is obviously Bournemouth are in Europe now as well. So Iraola's system with a thinner squad, not like a top 6 squad, playing that style might have been detrimental. Obviously, we will never know if he would be able to cope with that because he's gone now. But maybe having a slower, more reserved style could benefit a thinner squad, right? Anyway, guys, thanks so much for locking into this first episode. Spencer, you've been great. Henry as well, producer, has done everything behind the scenes, and it's been pretty smooth, I'd say, apart from that the TBL being on mute for the first bit. So yeah, shout out to all those guys. Shout out to all you guys as well. I've enjoyed this. We're going to do this every single Tuesday. The stocks ones are going to be ones we're going to monitor over the weekend and talk about, of course, and we're going to have different guests on. Make sure you DM us which guest you want on the show, because I'm going to be able to try and get whoever you guys want in the football space. But yeah, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you let your friends know how much you enjoyed this stream. And until next time, I hope you guys have